Okay, everybody, thank you very much for coming. Herman Kelly is my name, obviously an Irishman, as you can hear. Director of Communications for the EFD group, which stands for Europe of Freedom and Democracy, so the name is obviously self-explanatory. I would like to introduce a number of MEPs and assistants. Beside me we have Nigel Farage, MEP. We have Morten Messerschmidt from Denmark. We have Sampo Terho from Finland, Paul Nuttall from the UK, and an assistant to the EFD group, Francesca Saliano. Okay. So I'd just like to welcome you, thank you for coming, and I'll just let Nigel Farage, who is co-president of the EFD group, do the intro. I'd just like to say before we start that the leaflet is funded by the EFD group. It's from the central budget of the EFD group, so it is no way a leaflet from a single party within the EFD group, be it UKIP or the True Friends or whoever. It comes from the central budget of the EFD group, and just let me clarify that. The group here today are here at the invitation of the National Platform, which is an Irish, long-standing Irish organisation. And so we're here to discuss the Fiscal Union Treaty. So we'd like to just keep questions on that matter. Thank you very much. Mr. Farage.
Herman, thank you very much. Good to be back in Dublin, and good to be back in a country that has referendums, because of course across the rest of Europe governments do their absolute best to make sure that nobody ever gets the chance to express an opinion, so you're jolly lucky in that sense. One thing I want to deal with is, you'd have thought in the Lisbon referendums, you'd have thought that our little group in the European Parliament had poured millions of euros into the Irish campaign. In fact, the accusations of foreign interference were very loud and clear and strong. I want to deal with that straight away. I've just come in from the airport. I don't know whether any of you have noticed, but nearly all of the posters that are up on the lampposts have been funded by European money, chiefly by groups in the European Parliament. You have already, of course, here in Dublin, a European Commission information office. Equally, you have the government putting out its own leaflet, which masquerades as being neutral. Indeed, you've had foreign interference in your politics since 1973, to the extent that most of your laws are now made somewhere else, and your own Supreme Court is, of course, in Luxembourg. So I really think this very modest little attempt by us to try and put some arguments out and to help the no side, for us to be accused of interfering in Irish affairs is frankly ludicrous. What we have done, and it's rather a repeat, in the sense that it's the same operation that we've done before, is we have put together this leaflet, and we will be delivering that leaflet through every door in the country. And as I understand it, that's fairly well advanced at the moment. Certainly my email inbox at the European Parliament is very, very full of some extremely complimentary messages, others perhaps not so much, but that should be and ought to be the nature of democracy. So we've done this before, that is our contribution, and I hope that it does help, for at least there to be a proper argument. Our chief argument is that this treaty represents an unacceptable loss of sovereignty, to the extent where it begins to matter very little what government you have, certainly in terms of the ability to set a budget, because you will have to change your constitution in line with the new German plans. So we would argue that that's wrong. We would argue that Ireland's actually had a pretty rotten deal out of all of this. You're loaded up with bank debt, where other countries have had much of that debt written off. Whenever the European Union asks the Irish politicians to jump, they say, how high? You've been the good boys, but perhaps another way of putting it is, you've been the yes men. And I would also normally argue, in a referendum like this, why should anybody in Ireland believe their own political class? After all, they said that enlargement to the east would not mean big migratory flows into Ireland. They were wrong. In Lisbon too, we were told that if you voted for this treaty, it would be good for jobs, and my understanding is about 120,000 jobs have been lost since that second referendum. So, I would normally argue that, But what I would like to point out is that, of course, this is not the only treaty. And I don't think that debate really is being had in Ireland. There is another treaty following hard on the heels of this. Some suggest it's the evil twin to the Fiscal Union, which of course is the ESM treaty. Now many are saying that it's very important that of course you must go out and you must vote yes to this treaty, because in the future, if Ireland needs more bailout money, it's very, very important that we're on side. Well, it's very important, I think, to point this out, that with the ESM treaty, this second treaty, which the government doesn't propose to give you a referendum on, far from this being some sort of cash cow for Ireland, actually you are going to be liable for up to 11 billion euros. And indeed the first payment will be demanded in July of 250 million euros. So far from this being really very good for you, it could be rather bad for you. And I would be tempted to ask, where on earth would this bailout money come from anyway? Ireland is a very small country. We are probably on the verge of a bailout being needed for a country that is 7 times the size of your economy. I'm talking about Spain, although there are some sort of bets going on as to whether Spain or Italy, indeed, which has the 3rd largest level of debt of any country in the world, will be the next to be bailed out. So to argue that you should support this treaty because in time it will mean Ireland will be bailed out again, I don't think is a very powerful argument. So normally with a referendum, you know, it is about the issue, there's a yes side and a no side, and we are more than prepared to engage in that. But I do think actually there is now a very much bigger issue than the specific arguments for or against this treaty. The Eurozone is in deep crisis. In fact, I would think we're probably on the verge of some sort of disaster. It could happen this weekend. Maybe it'll take a few more months, but no one can deny that the situation is absolutely, desperately serious. All of which, of course, makes the Irish government's argument of vote yes for the stability treaty somewhat laughable. Because whatever else the Eurozone is, it certainly isn't stable. We've just had a new president in France. You've had a very odd first day, didn't you, really, with getting wet and the lightning strike, and straight off to see his German boss. We don't know what the result of that meeting really was, but Hollande has been elected to say he must renegotiate the terms of this treaty. The Greeks, you know, the pro-bailout parties, the pro-treaty parties in Greece collapsed to less than 1/3 of the vote in their first general election. Right across Europe, there is a wave of rebellion. There is another general election coming up in the Netherlands in June. What is the point of Ireland saying yes to a treaty, changing its constitution, when it is now extremely unlikely that this treaty will be able to proceed in its current form? It is virtually impossible that what you're being asked to vote on is going to stay as it is. There are going to be huge changes to the treaty, and there may well be even bigger changes to the Eurozone itself. So whatever the arguments for or against this treaty, whatever the conventional arguments that one would make in any normal referendum campaign, to me the biggest issue here is it would be madness, absolute madness, to sign yourself up to something that may well not exist in 2 or 3 weeks' time. Thank you.
No, I'll take questions. Danish MEP Martin Messerschmidt.
Thank you, Ellen. We've heard now for numerous times, each time that the treaties needed to be changed, that the reason for it would be to bring growth and stability, not only to Ireland, but to the entire European continent. I think it must be quite evident now that the euro is not bringing stability, nor growth, nor any peacefulness or happiness to the people of Europe. It's actually doing the quite contrary. And it's time that we begin to face what the real ideas behind the Euro project is, the real political project, which is to create a fiscal union where the entire sovereignty on the fiscal matters will not be in the now 27 member states, soon to be 28, but in Brussels, divided between Brussels and Luxembourg with the court, and then directed from Berlin. The content of this policy we saw quite clearly recently in the vote in the European Parliament, on the compulsory common corporate tax system, which a huge majority of the European Parliament now has agreed need on a compulsory level to be introduced in the member states. We know that Germany and France already support this idea. France and Germany politically, of course, being hugely influential. Germany now basically having bought their way into many of the political systems of the Euro countries. It's unlikely that this idea will not be driven forth by these countries. We know that the European Commission has already introduced the idea, and we don't believe any of these institutions, nor me, then trust Mario Draghi, the central bank director, who recently said that the entire idea of having this treaty is to introduce a fiscal union. That is what we will get from Brussels, even though Brussels has failed to deliver the results they promised. They will tell us that only more power to the bureaucrats, to the unelected people, will finally give what we are all looking for, namely growth and stability, but we're getting the very contrary thing. And the same thing will go with the common corporate tax. It will, regardless of whether the Irish people, the Danish people whom I represent, want it or not, it will be introduced, if not by the elected people, then by the appointed commissioners, if not by the appointed commissioners, then by the instructed judges. It will come because that's the essence of the European project, to build into an ever stronger union with more and more power concentrated in only one place. There's only one country that now, as the political realities are, has the true chance of stopping this train, stopping this emptying of sovereignty of the member states, and that is Ireland. So once again, even though how humiliating it is, actually as an elected representative from a proud, I would say, democracy, the Kingdom of Denmark, having to come to Ireland, another proud country, to fight for democracy, the humiliation, of course, is that I cannot do that in my own country, then that's where the fight is and that's where we will be. This is not only about Irish democracy, this is about the entire concept of democracy on the European continent, and that's why I'm proud to be in this room and will gladly walk the streets here and talk to the Irish voters today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Paul Nuttall, MEP.
Well, as you'll probably guess from my accent, I'm a Liverpudlian, I'm a Scouser, Catholic Scouser. I have a strong affiliation to Ireland, and I'm basically just here to say, please do not make the same mistake again, because I think you're suffering from the cumulative effects of a series of yes votes. You know, at Maastricht you gave away your currency and the right to control your own interest rates. At Nice you gave away the right to control your own borders and immigration into this country, and you've seen the effects that that has had. It drives down wages, it puts people out of work. At Lisbon you voted yes, and you allowed the European Union to bound on with political union. You handed over a massive amount of power, not to elected officials, but to faceless, unelected bureaucrats in the Commission in Brussels. And with this, they're now asking you to hand over the powers to Frankfurt and Brussels for full fiscal union. It's something which is needed, it's a prerequisite for a European superstate. Please do not let them get away with it. Please vote no. And please do not sign away hard-fought sovereignty. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Finnish MEP, Sampo Terho.
Thank you, Herman. Yes, I am from Finland, and you might ask, from me as from all of us, what are we doing here? The simple answer is, there's no reason to campaign in Finland because there is no referendum. I'm here to remind you that you are the lucky ones. Since Finland joined the EU in 1995, we have not had a single referendum about any vital issue. EU has transformed completely since the 90s. We had a referendum, should we join? But that was about a completely different union than we are now in and into which we are heading. We did not have a referendum